Hi, my name is Ryan Carney, and I'm going to be going over input and output in Java. I apologize for the background noise if you can hear it. My roommates are just listening to music. But let's get started. So, first of all, using a scanner to read from a file. So, you're going to first declare or initialize your file object. So as you can see here, we have file in file equals new file, and then we have whatever our file name is that we want to be. And that's just our file object that we're creating. And then we have a scanner reference, a null scanner reference. And basically this is needed for the finally block down here, but I'll get to that in a bit. So in our try block, we make a new object for the scanner reference that we made up here already. And we are just going to include our in file in the parameter of the scanner constructor. And basically, we have to do a try catch finally structure because if this file is not detected, then that means that the try state or the try block will throw a file not found exception, and we need to catch that with the try catch structure. And then when you're actually reading from the scanner or from the file using a scanner, you're going to use a while and then the scanner reference dot has next line method, and basically that is just a boolean, or it returns a boolean saying if the file has a next line or not. And if it doesn't have a next line, we know it's the end of the file. And we're going to add to this string that we made up here called result, which is what we're going to return when we're reading from the file. And we're just going to do every time that this while loop is executed, it just does result, and then it adds sc.next line, which basically just adds the next line of the file onto the string. And then it returns that result at the end. And when we're reading from a file, we need to close a scanner. And so basically, in the finally block, if this scanner is not null, then we close the scanner. If the scanner is null, then it means that this try block was never actually executed and we don't need to close the scanner. So that's why we have the finally block and we use this null reference. And then if we wanted to read integers or other numeric data types, I'm just going to show you guys for an example here. If we want to do scanner and we want to read an int, then we could just put next int here. And actually, I'm just going to do this real quick. If we just do scanner dot next, we can see there's a bunch of different types. Like we have next float, next int, next double, all that type of stuff. And so you can use, or you can read numeric data types by using those methods. Next up, we want to append a file or write to a file using a print writer. So first of all, you got to make your file object again. And then we're going to make another null print writer reference. We're also going to have to use a we're also going to have to use a try catch finally structure because it can also throw an IO exception. So we're going to make a file writer, and then you're going to have you can either do, if you do only one parameter, then that's just going to assume that you want to completely start the file over. So it's going to erase all the everything that was on the file, and it's going to start from scratch when you're writing to it. But if you use two parameters, this second parameter is if you want to use, or if you want to append the file, which means if you want to just basically continue writing on the same file but not actually change any of the previous data, then you can use file writer, and then we have our in file, which is the file object we made up here, dot get name. It just gives the name of the file, and then a true because we want to append the file. And then we use a print writer, and we assign it to a new print writer object, which has a file writer as a parameter. And then basically, this one's really simple. All you do is just do print writer dot println, and then we have our added text, which is up here, and it literally just adds the text to the actual file. And then once again, if we never actually got to execute this try block because there was an exception thrown, then the print writer reference will still be null, and this finally block will not actually execute. But if the try block does run, then the print writer has to be closed, a uh, just like the scanner did. And this doesn't have to be a string. Obviously, as we know, the println method actually can use, an integer. If I want to put one, oops, uh, if I just wanted to throw one in here, it would do the same thing, So it's just all about what you put in the actual parameter. And then next up, we have just how similar it is for reading from a URL or a file or the console using a scanner. So we already saw how to use a scanner to read from a file up here, but now we're going to read from a URL. So right here, I'm using a string buffer just because it's a little more efficient when actually reading, and they're also mutable. So sometimes they're preferred to strings. And it's faster because it doesn't have to make a new string object every single time. It can just append the string buffer already. So it's just a little bit more efficient. So when doing a URL, you have to make a URL object, and then we're just going to put the link in the URL object. And then once again, this can throw an exception. So we have to use a try catch finally structure. And then when you're using the scanner and you actually assign the scanner, you have to, and you make a new object, you have to do URL, which is just your URL reference, and then dot open stream. Next, you would do the same thing. So this time I decided to do has next, which basically means when it has another character, or integer, it basically just has another piece of data in it. And it says while the scanner has next, we're going to append to the string buffer, and then we're going to use that scanner dot next, and this is just going to take whatever is next into the scanner, which is going to be appended into the string buffer. And then we just turn our string buffer into a string by using sb.toString, and this is our result. And then the rest of this is just very specific to the actual lab, so it's not too important. And then once again, if this scanner reference is still null, then this doesn't have to be executed. If it's not null, that means that we have to close our scanner. And then finally, we have reading from a console using a scanner. And this one, when you make your scanner, so I just made a separate little class right here. And when you make your scanner, you're actually just going to use the system.in. And as you guys can see here, we have system.out because we're printing something to a console. This one we're reading something from a console, so we use system.in. And we are just, literally all it's going to do is just you input, or it's going to ask you to input your name and press enter, and then it's going to print out hello and then your name and an exclamation point after. So when I run this, you'll see in the top right, yes, so it asks us to input our name and press enter. So I'm just going to put hello, or I'm just going to put Ryan. And then this keyboard.next method pretty much just takes in whatever you put in, with as long as there's no, or yeah, it just takes what you put into the console before you press enter. So this should print out hello Ryan with an exclamation point. And perfect, there we go. It does, because I've told the console to print, or I've printed out to the console hello, and then whatever is next in that console, and then an exclamation point. So if I run this again, it's gonna be the same thing. If let's say I do Bob, then it'll be hello Bob. That's all I have for input and output. I hope you guys learned something. Thank you. Bye. And then another thing I wanted to add is that when you are taking data from, whether it's a file, URL, anything like that, using a scanner, Java automatically uses a thing called buffering data. And pretty much this just makes it so there's an in-between step from getting from wherever you're taking from to your program. So the middle is the buffer. And basically the buffer takes the data from the actual file or URL that you're taking data from, and then it takes this in large amounts into the buffer. And then once that buffer reaches a certain threshold, then the data is transferred to your program. And this just allows for a more efficient transfer of data between the actual place that you're taking data from and your program. That's it. Bye bye.